This month we're going to talk about hearing protection. We're going to start off by watching a short video.
Hello there. I said, hello there. Thanks. Can you hear me now? Good. So, have you heard that exposure to loud noises on the job can lead to hearing loss or worse? It can. In fact, an estimated 22 million U.S. workers are exposed to noise that is loud enough to be hazardous every year. Regardless of your workplace or tools, you should be aware that repeated exposure to loud noises can permanently damage your hearing. So, how do you know if you're being exposed to hazardous noise on the job? Well, do you hear ringing or humming in your ears after leaving work? Do you have to shout to a coworker an arm's length away to be heard? And do you experience temporary hearing loss after leaving the workplace? That's what I was afraid of. The amount of damage noise can do to your hearing depends on three things: decibel level, distance, and time. Let's take a closer look at each. Sound is measured in decibels. Safe or moderate sound levels are only around 50 to 60 decibels, which is the volume of most conversations. With extended exposure to levels that rise between 85 and 90 decibels, you're going to need some sort of hearing protection. This very loud volume can be produced by blow dryers, blenders, or vacuum cleaners. And you should put on that hearing protection now! Extremely loud sounds in the 90 to 110 decibel range are made by lawnmowers, hand drills, chainsaws, and even digital music players. The most damaging noises are classified as painful and include jet engines, jackhammers, and firearms, all of which can be deafening at 120 to 150 decibels. Distance is another key factor in protecting your hearing. Decibels decrease with distance from the source of any noise, so moving away will lower your chances of injury. The third key to protecting your hearing is time, because the damaging effects of noise can add up over your lifetime. So your risk for permanent damage increases with regular exposure to loud sounds. With sounds that are 100 decibels, limit your exposure to no more than 2 hours a day. At 115 decibels, you're limited to 15 minutes of exposure a day. Ask a supervisor about your company's hearing loss prevention program. At the very least, if you work around loud noises, you should always use appropriate hearing protection. Well, maybe not always. So, a quick recap. Lots of people suffer hearing loss on the job, but paying attention to volume levels, distance, and exposure time can make a big difference. So listen up and protect your ears. To get an earful of other workplace safety tips and techniques, call Montana State Fund.
One of the most common hazards for workers in the United States is noise. Exposure to high levels of noise can cause hearing loss, it can interfere with communication, and it can even contribute to accidents and injuries because you're not going to be able to hear warning signals that someone may be trying to give you. When is a noise too loud? Well, if you find yourself speaking loudly or shouting to someone that's right next to you, if you have trouble hearing someone talking when you're right beside of them, if a noise hurts your ears, or if your ears buzz or ring during a loud noise, or even after that noise goes away, those are some good indications that that noise is too loud. Noise over 85 decibels is considered to be hazardous. At higher decibel levels, hearing is damaged faster. So if you're listening to something that's 85 decibels, you have about 8 hours before damage is going to start occurring. Where if you're listening to something that's 100 decibels, you only have about 15 minutes that you can listen to it without damage starting to occur. Here's a chart with some everyday things that you may do or use. So if you're having a normal conversation, that's going to be about 60 decibels, where if you're running a chainsaw, that's going to be 110 decibels. So a chainsaw at around 110 decibels without proper hearing protection, it's only going to be able to run about 2 minutes before it starts causing damage to your ear. Here's a chart that goes into a little more detail. So if you're on a motorcycle or a tractor, it's about 97 decibels that noise is going to produce. And you can listen to that without protection for about 30 minutes before it's going to start causing damage to your hearing. And if you're using a jackhammer, that's 120 plus decibels. So that's going to start causing damage without hearing protection immediately. Symptoms of exposure to loud noises is going to be hearing loss and ringing or buzzing sound in the ears. You can have short-term exposure, and that your symptoms are usually going to improve with rest and some quiet time. If you have long-term exposure, those symptoms can become permanent. Hearing loss from noise exposure is usually not noticed because it's so gradual. Usually a person loses the ability to hear higher pitched noises first, and it's often more noticeable when you can't hear what someone is saying when they're talking to you. A lot of times your family may notice before you do because you're going to have a hard time hearing what they're saying when they're right next to you. You may be saying what or huh all the time, or your family member may walk into the house and a TV is so loud that they can hear it outside and you don't realize that it's that loud. So what can you do to protect your hearing? Well, if you're doing something that is producing a noise that has a volume on it that you can lower, that's a good idea. If you're around a noise that you can move away from, that helps. The farther you are away from the noise, the lower the decibel will be. And if you're around something or doing something that's producing a noise that you can't get away from, you should be wearing hearing protection like earmuffs or foam or silicone ear inserts. All hearing protectors are designed to reduce the loudness of noise in the inner ear. That's where the damage is going to occur. The noise reduction rating, or NRR, of hearing protection is measured in decibels. And this is an example of that NRR that is on every package of earmuffs or earplugs that you will use or should use. The higher the number, it's going to be the greater the protection. So let's do an example. If you are using a chainsaw that's around 100 decibels and you are wearing these earplugs that are going to reduce the sound by 29 decibels, that's going to make it around 71 when you subtract that 29. And so that's a safe decibel if you have your earplugs inserted properly. It takes just a few minutes of unprotected noise above 100 decibels to cause hearing damage. If your earplugs are not inserted correctly into your ear canal or completely, that can also cause hearing damage. Same thing for earmuffs. If they're not snug against your head, they could leak noise into your ear, causing hearing damage. Let's go over the steps to properly insert an earplug. First, you're going to roll the plug into a very thin, crease-free cylinder. Then with the opposite hand, you're going to pull your ear outward and upward, and then insert it with the other hand. And you want to insert that plug well into the ear and hold it there for about 30 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, until it starts to expand. And you're going to be able to feel when it starts expanding. Here's some examples of an incorrect and a correctly inserted earplug. If the earplug is inserted correctly, it's going to be flush or right under that little flap in the front part of your ear. If it's not inserted correctly, the earplug is going to stick out into your ear, and someone looking at you is going to be able to see that plug sticking out of your ear. So here's a close-up view of the ear. The one on the left the plug is inserted correctly. It's right there behind that little flap in the ear. And the one on the right is not inserted correctly because the earplug is sticking way out of the ear. Probably half of that earplug is sticking out into the outer ear. So here are 7 fun facts about hearing. Your hearing is dependent on small hairs deep inside your ear. If these hairs disappear or become damaged, that's when you're going to have hearing damage and could even lose your hearing. Your ears don't stop hearing when you sleep. your brain chooses to ignore sound. Your outer ear never stops growing throughout your lifetime. Your middle ear is about the size of an M&M. And our ear has 3 of the smallest bones in our body. There's an example of how small those bones are. All 3 of those bones can fit on a penny. Ears not only help you hear, but also aid in balance. Snakes hear through their jawbone, and fish hear through the ridges in the body because neither have physical ears. The roar we hear when we place a large seashell next to our ear is not the ocean, but it's the sound of blood rushing through our veins in our ear. I found an app that measures decibels. It's a NIOSH sound level meter. It's a free app. I tried it out, and quiet noise like air conditioning running is about 40 decibels. When I was talking, it was around 60 decibels. I tried different things just to see what the decibels were. So if you're out on a job site or somewhere that's noisy, you can use this app to see how many decibels that noise is, and if you need some kind of hearing protection for that noise. There's also a way to calibrate the app and a way you can record if you need to save how high or low a noise around you is. It's going to show you the different hazards and how long you can be exposed to that noise without there being damage. If you have any questions or comments, I'll try to answer them. You can reach me by stopping by the lab, or you can call me at extension 104.